morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of the program. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly and permanently ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. 20 days left in the 2024 primary election. Just 20 of them. And if you thought that all of the campaign mailers that have been filling up your mailbox are over, think again. They've just begun. Right now, I've got a whole stack of them sitting on my desk. And if I were not the proprietor of Cowboy State Politics, they would have went immediately into File 13, which is the destination of most of them. And just think about the money that goes into sending out all these ridiculous pieces of mail. Last time I checked, just the postage alone for sending out a mailer to an entire House district was about $2,500. So, the stack of the 20 pieces of political garbage that I have sitting here in the studio represents about $20,000. And that's just from 2 House districts. And that doesn't include all of the printing costs that go along with them. Of course, we won't have a better idea of how much money was spent on all of these ridiculous mailers until August 13th. That's the day that all of the YCFS reports are due to the Secretary of State's office. My guess is we are going to find a tremendous amount of money that was spent in this year's Wyoming primary election. A lot of that money is probably also going to be from out-of-state sources, some of which being the very people that claim you should ignore everything that comes from out of state. For example, Americans for Prosperity. Now that's a political activism group that's run by Tyler Lindholm, and while he is the Wyoming representative, the group itself is based in Arlington, Virginia. Or the Prosperity and Commerce Political Action Committee, or PAC. What a stupid name. That is Governor Mark Gordon's Political Action Committee, and interestingly enough, if you go to the Wyoming Campaign Finance Information System, you'll find that most of the big money donors to Governor Gordon's PAC aren't even anywhere close to the state of Wyoming. Yeah, for a guy that claims to be exposing all of this out-of-state dark money, he sure takes a lot of it to use in Wyoming elections. Allow me to just quote the little text message that I received from the good governor over the weekend, and I quote, "Hello, this is Governor Mark Gordon. Primaries are ramping up. It's time to heed the wisdom of one of our greatest Republican presidents, Ronald Reagan. Trust but verify." I absolutely agree. We should absolutely verify everything Governor Mark Gordon says, and I'm about to do so. But let me continue. Quote, "This election year, Wyoming is seeing unprecedented mailings, texts, like this one, emails, and calls. Telling half-truths and outright lies doesn't work for the good people of Wyoming. So visit Fact Check Wyoming before you cast your 2024 primary ballot to learn more about who will protect our Wyoming way of life. We've done great work for Wyomingites. Let's keep it up." End quote. To verify the good governor's Political Action Committee's funding source, one need only look as far as the Wyoming Campaign Finance Information System, or YCFS. Among the many contributors to the governor's Prosperity and Commerce Political Action Committee PAC is the Alliance of Automotive Innovation from Washington, D.C., Altria Client Services, LLC of Sacramento, California, Continental Resources of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Core Civic Organization. That one's from Nashville, Tennessee, and then there's DirecTV of El Segundo, California, Dish Network of Washington, D.C., the Enterprise Leasing Incorporated organization of Fullerton in Centennial, Colorado, and the Fantasy Sports Alliance organization of Arlington, West Virginia, the Helix Innovation LLC of Sacramento, California, the John Middleton Company of Sacramento, California, the Lumen Technologies Organization of Denver, Colorado, Merck and Company of San Rafael, California, and of course, the vaccine-producing company Pfizer would never forget Mark Gordon during an election. They gave him $1,250. And of course, the owner of the Cowboy State Daily, B. Wayne Hughes, also contributed to the governor's PAC. So for an organization and governor that decry all of this out-of-state money in Wyoming elections, Mark Gordon sure takes a lot of money from them. More bullcrap coming from the Wyoming left. Now, you can verify all of this stuff if you just go to the Wyoming Campaign Finance Information System and look up the Prosperity and Commerce Political Action Committee, and you'll find all of these campaign donations right on the Secretary of State's website. And of course, all of the names that I just mentioned are from 2022 and 2023. We don't have the campaign finance information reports until August 13th, so we're bound to find a whole bunch of other dark money sources that are funneling campaign cash to Governor Mark Gordon. But that's just Mark Gordon. So don't forget about the Wyoming Caucus PAC. I cannot wait to dig into those reports. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. And unfortunately, a little bit depressing, because it's going to show that a lot of these people have been lying through their teeth to you. Fun times to come, my friends, fun times. A couple of program notes before we continue with today's interview with Representative Pepper Ottman. On Saturday's installment of Weekend Update, I have a, shall we say, fascinating interview with none other than founder of the Frontier Republicans, Gail Simmons. You heard that correctly, my friends. The very first person that I interviewed on this program came back for round 2, and it is equally as dizzying as the first time. And before you ask, I did ask her some of the very same questions that I did 4 years ago, and her answers, well, they're just as convoluted as they were the first time. So that's coming on Saturday's installment of the program. Another story that we're working on, and you may have seen some of this on social media, Facebook, and floating around on Messenger, but it has come to light that Speaker of the Wyoming House, Albert Sommers, has some connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah, you heard that right. The Chinese Communist Party. And he's not the only one in the Wyoming legislature to be hanging out with this group. So keep your eyes peeled for that story. We're going to bring it to you in short order. So lots of stuff coming very quickly on Cowboy State Politics. But for today's program, I have a great interview with Representative Pepper Ottman. She's running for re-election in House District 34 over in Fremont County. It's a great interview, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. Here is what we talked about. Joining me on the program is House 34 Representative Pepper Ottman. Pepper is running for re-election, and she's been kind enough to sit down and visit with me for a few minutes. So first, welcome to Cowboy State Politics, Pepper.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and congratulations on your new marriage.
Oh, thank you very much. We just got back from our honeymoon yesterday. Now it's back to real life. It's been a while, Pepper, so why don't you just take a few minutes and tell my listeners about yourself?
Okay, my name is Pepper Ottman. I live just west of Riverton in Fremont County. My house district is House District number 34, and that encompasses the municipalities, small towns of Du Bois, Pavilion, Kinnear, Campbell's Corner, east side of Riverton, Jeffrey City, and now since redistricting, the east side of Lions Valley Road over in Lander. So it's quite large and very diverse with small towns and everything. But one of the things that I'd like to mention is that this isn't Cheyenne and it isn't Casper. It isn't over on the I-25 corridor. This is Fremont County. It's rural, and our folks are rural people, and the level of income is rather low.
Okay.
Oh, I might add as well, I'm an incumbent, and I'm running for my third term.
Okay, well, so let's talk about that for a minute, Pepper. You've been in for 2 terms, and I get a kick out of it every time you go to the microphone because you've always got something pretty poignant to say. But let me just ask you: you've been in there for 2 terms. Why are you running for a third term in the Wyoming House?
That's a very good question. I believe that people should not be professional politicians, but I do know that the times are changing so very rapidly. In the legislature this past year, we passed a budget that was very, very, very large. And one of the reasons that there was some support on it was because of all of the things that they added in. At one point, the budget was about $700 million difference between the House and the Senate, and so there's just a lot there that needs to be trimmed down. The other thing is that we were not able to pass a bill that was sponsored by Representative Ward called "What is a Woman?" That bill would have helped our school districts be able to develop policy that would have helped them stay away from litigation and some of just the pressures that they feel. That bill also would have enabled some of the insurance companies to be able to say, you know what, that is a chosen surgeries, some of these surgeries, not necessary. And so the insurance companies would not be strapped with clients that would be lifelong dependent on insurance. So that's just one example. The other one is I'm a member on the state shooting complex, and I'd really like to see that come to fruition. We've got it. Well, we actually chose one property, but there's still quite a bit that I believe needs to be flushed out in that choice. The other thing is I'm on the corporations committee, and our chairman decided that we weren't going to handle any election bills this time through the interim. And that's very concerning, as tabled was the residency requirement. And another legislator just tabled that right in the middle, and it had heavy support from both sides. So those are just some things that I want to follow up on. Also, in my first term in the legislature, I was very concerned about what we deemed 30 by 30. And I was told that, yes, we'll do it. And then no, I was shut down on that. And as we see with the Rock Springs resource management plan, also Buffalo, and out here in my district in Muddy Ridge, we see with the water and the land, this is extremely important. And I want to be able to bring those things back with a lot more background and information.
Well, let's just take a couple of those. I'm very interested in the shooting complex, and I don't really know. I go back and forth whether I support it or not. I was privy to a lot of the discussions when that bill was, being created. Why don't you give me your pitch on why we should support the shooting complex? Because, like I say, I'm still on the fence about it. So convince me, Pepper.
Oh, okay. Well, what I will say is it's a great opportunity for the state to bring in industry, to bring in more tourism, to have small businesses develop, and to bring in jobs that would hire people that we don't currently have. So that's a lot of it. The other and very important reason is because we here in Wyoming are Amendment 2 folks, and this would help the nation to be able to participate, to get trained, to see it for sport, and to just encourage those entities to reinvigorate sports, and to reinvigorate hunting, and to get women involved, which they always were. A lot of women lived on the prairie and had to protect themselves. So there's a lot of things that we have lost over the last 20 years that it could, and I hope would bring back. The other thing is not only sports and hunting. But this is the way that we protect ourselves from encroachment. And I think that people need to be familiar with firearms. They need to be familiar with the way to use them properly and for protection. So there's a whole lot of facets there, and just all of these side entities that could grow from this with hotels and restaurants and just a lot of other things.
One question I've had all along on this thing, and hopefully you can answer this for me, but has there been any discussion of turning this shooting complex over to a private entity after it's all built and anything, or is that not part of the discussion, or where are we at on that?
David, just to be candid, what I had seen at the very beginning, there's 2 representatives and 2 senators, and the rest are bureaus. And what I had understood was that we would go into the fall with meetings and questions and different things like that. It was ramped up, and so here we are that we've chosen one of applicants and said that we were going to go with that. I'm sorry, would you tell me your question again?
Sure. I'm just wondering if you guys have had any discussion of turning this complex over to a private entity to run it, or is it still just the state going to run this whole thing?
It was my understanding that it would, and one of the reasons why I even wanted to be on the task force was because my background is in travel, rec, and hospitality management. So I see this as a moneymaker and that it would be able to stand on its own. But I can honestly tell you that the task force, that is not their feeling. I see that this very well could be, especially with some of the people that put in proposals, that with all of the companies and the manufacturers and the world things that could go on and be sponsored, the sponsorships, it could well be, but especially with good management team. But that doesn't seem to be the taste that the chairmanships are going. I hope that changes. I really hope that changes. We've got a little time here, and we're going to have to present it on the floor of the House and also the Senate. So we're going to have a strong case there to make it. And I would hate to see our state lose this because we can't come to a good consensus on what is the best for a world-class shooting facility in the state of Wyoming.
Yeah, it kind of strikes me as, like a stadium. For example, the Mile High Stadium in Denver. A company will take it over for a while, and then you'll see the name change to another company. So, I think there's a lot of potential there for, I don't know, like Winchester or Magpul or Weatherby or some other company to be able to take it over. But like you say, we still have to debate this thing on the floor, so there's a lot of stuff that isn't decided about it.
One of the things that I've heard often is that we want it to be Wyoming's world class. And with the initial investment, that it should be underneath, at least have legislature on board with the decision making. So like I said, there's a lot of questions, and I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls from folks that have information and questions and opinions. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing because we want it for the state, not just one community.
Yeah, for sure. We'll continue with the program in just a second. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Cowboy State Politics is brought to you by the Wyoming Cartridge Company. They're a Wyoming-based company that produces ammunition designed to make you a better shooter. Each cartridge that comes out of their Wyoming-based plant is inspected by no less than 4 people. You're not going to get that type of quality control from anyone in the ammunition industry. I've personally gone through several boxes of ammunition, and I'm telling you, it holds a pattern just as good as any other type of ammunition that you're going to buy off the shelf. You're going to buy some ammo anyway, you may as well get it from a Wyoming-based company. To get you a box, you can find it at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports in both Casper and in Sheridan, at the Sheridan Commercial Company, the Sheridan Co-op, Bighorn Trading, the Sheridan Pawnbroker, and Cornerstone Pharmacy over in Buffalo. That's the Wyoming Cartridge Company. Also sponsoring today's program is Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for an outbuilding or a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger like a barn or a roping arena or even a giant warehouse for your business, the two guys you need to talk to are Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They are the experts in metal building construction. They've been doing it longer than anybody else around, and they do a much better job than anybody else. So it doesn't really matter what type of building you've been thinking about for your property. Give Nick and Jesse a call. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532. Or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com.
Jackie Van Mark loves Liz Cheney and was one of her only and most avid supporters in Wyoming. She even stated to an NPR reporter in 2022 that she'd like to see Liz run to beat Donald Trump.
We've got another 2 years till a presidential election. Maybe there's someone else in the Republican Party that can beat him. I would like to see it to be her. I think she would be fantastic.
Jackie Van Mark, Liz Cheney's best friend, not yours. Vote Scott Smith for House District 5 on August 20th.
Paid for by Scott Smith for House District 5.
Gunrunner Auctions is one of the nation's leading online firearms auction houses, and they're celebrating their 27th year. Over in Cody, Scott Weber and his team specialize in estate firearms. First thing they do is travel to the estate and appraise the firearms for the heirs. He then takes them to his Cody auction facility where he and his team research them, sometimes getting factory letters from the Cody Museum about each firearm's history. Then, every month, beginning on the 7th, Scott and his team post 500 fine firearms for sale. Winchesters, Colts, rare military weapons, and almost always a wide selection of hard-to-find ammunition. If you're looking for a gun, or if you don't even know that you're looking for a gun, you should go to gunrunnerauctions.com. The following advertisement was paid for by Reed Reisner for Senate.
I'm Reed Reisner, and I'm running for United States Senate because our politicians have forgotten what's important. They spend billions protecting borders in Europe and do nothing about our border. You deserve better. Wyoming deserves better. That's why I'm running, to serve you. Join me, and let's send new blood and a strong backbone to D.C. before it's too late. Go to reedreisner.com to learn more and join the fight.
And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. Before the break, we were talking with House District 34 Representative Pepper Ottman. Let's continue with that interview. Now, Pepper, you did a lot of work with the Republican Party before you were in the legislature. So let's talk about the platform for a little bit. So I guess first question, do you support the Republican Party platform? And then second, well, I'll let you answer that one, and then I'll go to my next question.
As far as the Republican platform goes, yes, sir, I do. I supported all of it. And the reason being is because that platform it went from the grassroots up. There is not a principle, timeless principle in that platform that every American should be proud of and support for our protection, for our sovereignty, and for the prosperity of our country and state.
One of the questions that I've been asking every person or every candidate that I've interviewed, and I think this is one that we're like all of us are kind of grappling with, certainly in this election, is what does it mean to be a Republican to you, Pepper?
For me to be a Republican is to believe in private property rights, to believe that life begins at conception, to believe that people have a right to defend themselves and their homes, and that we need smaller government, not larger government, that taxation is robbery in a lot of cases if it's not to support the proper function and role of government, and it is to promote small business and independence and unreliability on the government.
Fair enough. I don't think I could have said it better myself. So now that you're running for re-election, what are the main issues that you've been talking about with your constituents? What do you want to do if you're successful in your third term?
What I would like to do, as I was kind of intimating earlier, we have a lot going on here with land. A lot of our land here is BOR. I learned more acronyms in the last 6 months than I ever thought I would. The Bureau of Reclamation is in conversation with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We have a large tribal presence over here. And while they deem themselves as a sovereign nation, the politics and government responsibility of the state seems to be pretty intertwined with them. Also, there's not a wall built between there, so our communities are very open to one another. So what I would say was that creates a lot of gray area in what is everybody's responsibility. And what I will say is I have 4 different school districts in my district. We have 8 school districts in our county. And what I see is that is a behemoth, that it is going to break our state if we don't get it straightened out. I've asked some of the educators because they're very concerned that they're going to lose money. And I've asked them if they would like the block grant looked at. No, they don't want that. But it needs to be looked at. Campbell County was the nexus for the cost, a lot of it because of a lawsuit. Nothing against the people of Campbell County. They just, they mine and they have that in their community. We don't have that industry here. And a lot of people think that equity rather than equality is the order for the day. And I'm afraid I don't quite agree with that. The other thing is Medicaid expansion. There is such a push to do that. And I believe with all my heart that it would bankrupt not only our state, but our country. And it's being pushed. And while it's being pushed, the things that would create the use of that Medicaid expansion, abortion, health problems, drug abuse, violence, bad habits, bad eating, lack of good food and nutrition, all of those things make for more expense with that Medicaid expansion. And so I don't go for that. And I guess the other thing, education and health, and I just really want to see some things change. I'm on management audit as well. We've had 1 meeting. And what I have been receiving now, because of some decisions we made in that committee, is lots of reports, and they're long. And so I would really like to get a voice in there and say, look, give us the bottom line. We want to see where your money comes from, where you're spending it, and if that's what you need. And so I'd like to continue in that. So those are just a few things.
Let's go back to education for a minute. You mentioned that it's going to bankrupt our state if we don't fix it. I'm more concerned about what I think is a more fundamental problem, and that's that even though we spend a ridiculous amount of money on education, our test scores are pretty well mediocre. So, Pepper, why are we having such a hard time teaching kids how to read?
Well, David, that's an extraordinary question, because I worked in education for 17 years. I worked at an elementary school. I started in there as a substitute teacher and then went on in to working as an aide. And then I worked with math and reading remediation. And I'll just give you one example of what I see. I was sitting in committee meetings a couple years ago, and it was for the health and labor. And the Wyoming Education Association was in there, and we were having a rather, we were having a discussion. And one of the things that the fellow from the WEA said was that our test scores are up, and they just didn't understand why I didn't support that. Well, the test scores were up from way, way below what they should have been. They weren't even at the level that just is acceptable. And so they had increased up to 40% of what should be passing. So what I'll say is No Child Left Behind was something that I spoke very strongly against. And I did for 2 years. And our superintendent did not do it for a while. But then it got down to where the federal government came in and said, you will do this or you will lose a lot of your funding. So everybody signed on. From that moment on, the curriculum changed, the times allotted changed, the teacher responsibility changed, and the scores began to go down. My generation learned to read. It was one of the fundamental things that we do. You learn to read, you learn your basic math skills so that you can be a profitable citizen, and so that you know how to learn. Whatever you want to learn, you can learn if you can read and write. They're not even doing cursive. I sent a couple notes. The kids couldn't even read it. So how can they read our founding documents or anything else? So what I believe the problem is in higher education. We need to get some of these professors that are not in the classroom, they're just writing papers. We need to get them out of control of our schools.
Do you think that we ought to consolidate school districts? I mean, you mentioned that there in Fremont County, there's 8 school districts. You think we ought to consolidate them all down to one per county?
Well, there's a lot of support, or I'll say voice in that. And I know one fellow in particular, because when you look at school districts, you look at district offices, you looked at superintendents, and then all of the IT staff and the management staff and the office manager and the business manager and all of those things. Principals, vice principals, assistant principals, assistant vice principals. So if you're looking at all of that and say consolidation, yeah. But what I will say is that when visiting the schools in my district, for instance, Du Bois, and also with Wind River, and then down to Riverton, 3 totally, absolutely, positively different communities. And I don't know how that would work. Also, the miles, it is about, from Riverton to Du Bois is about...
Long ways.
Yeah, it's close to 150 miles, I think. And so I can see where it could be consolidated in that possibly communication could be better, and maybe some of the districts could be lower in staff. I don't know. The superintendent in the district I worked at, she worked very, very, very hard to get the designation as elementary, middle school, high school for funding purposes. Those kids are on the buses a lot. So it's something that I would really want to hear. I would like to hear from somebody other than lobbyists, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I would like to hear from, okay, this would work, this wouldn't work, this is a good idea, this isn't, and give people the opportunity to voice, like the bus drivers, the teachers, the aides, the parents, the children. I would like to hear from those people what they see that's working, what they see that just wouldn't work, and to go from there. I am very impressed, particularly with the leadership up at the school at Du Bois. He has done phenomenal things. He looks at the needs of his district, and he gets in there and they do it. They just, if the wall needs built, they do it. If a situation opens up, they do it. As far as mental health goes, they were having some problems with some things. There's a mental health professional in their community, and they got them to come in and to help. They didn't wait for the government to do it. They did it with what they have, and I was very impressed with that.
Oh yeah, that's very impressive. You mentioned at the beginning of our interview that you have a very rural district. A lot of the folks are fairly low income, but that doesn't mean that they're immune to the problems we have with property taxes. So, Pepper, if you had the magic wand and you could figure out how to fix this whole property tax mess, what would you do?
Oh, as far as property tax, one, I would say that what people pay for a property is what they should be taxed on. If it's that value to you, then you would have that to do. There's a lot of land in my district, and hay and cattle are big in the outside districts, but in little places like Kinnear, where you have a population of like 68, or Pavilion, where you have a population of 128, Du Bois, where I think there's 645. That's different. Most of the people have lived there for quite a long time, or live in homes that have been there a long time. Because there is a shortage of homes, those rates are going up, and therefore their taxes are. Out here where I live, there's people, there was people coming in that paid 150% of the asking price, because where they came from, the properties had gone up so high. And honestly, my husband and I moved here in 1998 from Grand Junction, Colorado, and the same thing was happening. You just price out, you can sell your property for higher, but you can't buy anything in the place where you live. So you try to go somewhere else where it's a little less expensive. But we are pricing ourselves out. And what I will say also is, since property tax is the nexus for the county government, our county government has some problems. And one of them, even with their audit that went on last year, it was a mess. And so they're fighting to keep funds up when their employees make, I would say, anywhere from 20 to 30,000 more per person than the people in my district do.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's why I feel pretty strongly about it. When I got in the workforce, my father told me, he said, you can either work for private industry and make better money, or you can work for government and you'll make less money, but you'll have better benefits. Well, in this day and age, government wants to be the highest paid that there is, and have the most excellent benefits. And I just don't see that that's right, considering where the money is coming from for those.
Actually, one of the more startling statistics in Wyoming is that our number one industry is not mining; it's actually government. And
right.
When you look at the numbers, and you see the departments all the time being in the legislature, that WyoDOT is huge, Department of Education is huge, and and maybe that's a better question, right? So we've got a huge bloated budget. We've got a bigger budget today than we have ever had. So where do you think that we ought to start cutting, Pepper? Or should we start cutting anything?
To be perfectly honest, there are some entities in government that don't do anything. And that's not slamming the people, but just that things have been so enlarged, And it for instance, WYDOT. Do I want good highways? Well, of course I do. Do some people want to see all these little historical things out alongside the road and stuff like that? Yeah, they enjoy that very much. Is the underground cable and things like that that's going on for internet service through YDOT? Yeah, we're looking at that. But honestly, in a state with 600,000 people, can we afford to have all those things all at one time, and then not only to spend the money that came in from the federal government, which was astronomical, but to sustain those things? I mean, I don't know if you see it in your neck of the woods, but as we spend more money and more poles go up, my internet and phone service get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's a clog. I mean, things aren't clear. And so there's just a lot. It's like when they wanted to put irrigation underneath, put it in pipe rather than have those open ditches that wasted water. Well, we're finding out now that there's some big problems underground that we don't know until they're a disaster. So a lot of our progress and thought processes really aren't thought through. And over here, I was told a couple days ago, we have no more water. There is no more water. So what about the hay? What about the animals? What about production? What about the businesses that depend on the people that do agriculture? I think cities are wanting growth. Well, okay, then do it. One of the things I disagree with very, very much is a lot of the bills that we have should be local. If you want to raise taxes or if you want to build government, do it in your county and in your municipality. It should not be a state bill, because either some local localities, either they can't afford that amount, or they're going to be always depending on government to provide it. So I think we just have a lot of growing pains. I didn't want to live in Philadelphia. I didn't want to live in New York City. I don't want to live in Denver. I chose to live west of Riverton, Wyoming. And I don't have all those services, nor do I expect to have them.
Well, Pepper, we've talked about a number of topics today. Is there anything that we missed that you would like to talk about?
Well, probably when we're through, I'll say, oh, I wanted to mention that. I just want to say that this election is very, very, very important, and for a lot of reasons. There is such anger and animosity right now. A lot of people say, well, we need to be more civil. Politics is politics, and we have two totally different worldviews in our persons and also in our government. We have tax and spend people, and then we have people that believe that government should be limited and that people should live within their means. We have people that want to be wards of the court and wards of the state, and people that say, you know what, you choose to live the way you want to live. I shouldn't have to pay off your student loans. I shouldn't have to pay for your medical care. And so there's going to be those fights, and it's going to be long and hard. But what I will say is that we have a group of people that are running for office that never even considered it, and myself included, until things started getting so bad that I said, I have to do something. I can't just sit here and be a victim or be miserable and not do anything about it. So we're having a lot of new people running for office and candidating, and there's quite a few of them that are very, very good. So what I would say is, if the people of House District 34 elect for me to serve them, I will do it wholeheartedly. And the gentleman that's running against me is very into conservation, which I support conservation and good stewardship, but it is also one of the things in 2024 that conservation goes along with putting things under President Joe Biden's 30-30 and the takeover of our lands and waters into perpetuity. And nobody can say that that is not happening, because it is. And I guess that's that's pretty much what I have to say.
Excellent. Well, Pepper, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
People can reach me at pepper.ottman and it's Ottman, Ottman. I get a lot of Ottomans. It's Ottman at wyoleg.gov, or my personal email is peppero@wyoming.com. You can also reach me by phone at 307-851-7711 anytime.
All right. Well, Pepper, thank you very much for taking the time to visit with me. Good luck on your campaign, and just don't forget, you're welcome here anytime you like.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you for all of the work that you do. You've started a revolution as far as helping people get heard by the media, because over here we don't. We sure don't. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Pepper. You have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye.
That'll do it for today's installment of the program. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk again on Saturday when I'll play the Gail Simmons interview for you. Like I said, it's just as dizzying as the first one. And keep your ears peeled for that story about Albert Sommers. It's coming very, very soon. We're going to find out what Albert Sommers has to do with the Chinese Communist Party. What's even probably more perplexing is that the Communist Party wants to have anything to do with Albert Sommers. That one's coming soon. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.